Did you know there is a country in South America where most of its population are of Indian origin and where the official language is English? Now, if you don't know which country I'm talking about, don't worry, because this is one of the least known countries in the region, and to be fair, the media doesn't really pay that much attention to it. So, a small little country that the media don't talk about very much, well, that sounds like the perfect ingredients for a VisualPolitik video. We are talking about Guyana, an old British colony who didn't get independence until 1966. Interestingly, at the moment of independence, both the government and popular opinion was generally in favor of turning Guyana into a socialist country. It was this mindset which gave the country its Pinto-esque official name, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. But let's focus on the country today. Guyana is one of the poorest countries in South America. It has crime and violence rates that are some of the highest in the entire region, and that's saying a lot. In fact, if Guyana is known for anything, it would be for its place in the international supply of cocaine. Oh, and also for having one of the highest suicide rates in the world, so not exactly brilliant things. Now, with all of this information, you'd be forgiven for not being optimistic about the future of this Caribbean country. But they may be about to get a lot luckier.
A new oil power.
All the signs point to Guyana becoming an oil power. For the time being, this small republic with a population of about 750,000 inhabitants has already got the attention and dollars of multinational companies such as Exxon or HESCO. In fact, after several years exploring the area, on January the 13th, 2017, these two powerful oil companies announced the discovery of what they think could be one of the most significant oil and gas reserves found for decades. Oil reserves have been found in deep waters in the sea mantle under the coastal waters of Guyana. Early calculations estimate that the amount of oil which can be exploited in the country is no less than 4,000 million barrels, and many experts affirm this could be a much larger quantity. So it seems that this country holds a huge fortune just off its shores. But the question really is, how much is this all really worth? Considering the price of oil nowadays, we are talking about roughly $200 billion. So leaving other natural resources aside and considering only petrol, this would result in the equivalent of $250,000 per citizen. And it's important to note that the oil reserves could be much bigger than the early calculations indicate. Now, it is true that oil exploitation is expensive and requires enormous investment, but this could still be the first step in a new era of prosperity for Guyana. So far, the oil companies I've mentioned, ExxonMobil and Hess, have committed to investing $900 million a year in Guyana over the next few years. The government is investing too, with plans to start exporting oil in 2020. This means Guyana could be on the cusp of becoming one of the greatest economic developments that South America has ever seen. Yes, Guyana, that poor, violent country, could become the kind of country which other people in South America who are unemployed might look at and think, I want to change my life, I want opportunities, I want to go to Guyana. Guyana could become that big hope for many unemployed South American people. Nevertheless, before they start packing, we have to say that it's not going to be that easy. The road ahead is going to be fraught with difficulties.
Conflict with Venezuela.
Much of the oil exploration is happening in areas that have been claimed by Venezuela, and the part they have claimed is not exactly small. Maduro considers the region known as Guyana Essequiba to be theirs, and this region represents more than 70% of Guyana's surface. So essentially, Venezuela is claiming the entire country as their own. And as if this wasn't bad enough, another area which makes up 7% of its territory is claimed by their neighbors in Suriname. If their neighbors had their way, Guyana would have been carved up and split between them a long time ago. The thing is, this conflict over territory seemed to have been forgotten for years. This was likely a consequence of the good relations that the government kept with Cuba, a country that holds a lot of influence over this part of the world. It was also likely because Venezuela wanted the support of organizations such as CARICOM, the Caribbean Community, of which Guyana is a member. So now you might be wondering, is Guyana a Caribbean country or is it a South American country? Well, it's sort of both. Geographically speaking, the country is in South America, but politically, culturally, and socially speaking, Guyana is a Caribbean country. In fact, Guyana was one of the countries which used to benefit from PetroCaribe, an initiative by Hugo Chavez that was supplying cheap, high-quality oil to those countries which were deemed friends. But it all changed when, on May the 11th of 2005, the left-wing government of the People's Progressive Party lost the general elections to a coalition headed by their new president, David Granger, a man who was closer to Washington and who decided to end, once and for all, the claims coming from Venezuela. It was at that moment that the long-ignored conflict defrosted and things really started to heat up.
Is still carrying a monkey on its back. That monkey is the unbearable burden of an oppressive and obnoxious claim on our land and sea space.
Now the conflict is in the hands of the United Nations. But whatever the solution might be, if there is any, it's important to be aware of this threat to the potential prosperous future of Guyana.
Racial conflict.
Another important risk is the recurrent racial conflict in Guyana, which is a continuous presence in the country's media. Guyana is a complex country demographically. Around 50% of its population is of Indian origin, while 40% is of African origin. These are two big groups who are not exactly on the friendliest of terms. In fact, the black minority claims that for years the Indian majority has obtained privileges from the government and always got their way. This has triggered recurrent waves of violence. Luckily, the situation seems to have improved. In fact, the winning coalition government is quite multiracial. However, there is still the possibility that further internal conflict will flare up. In any case, not only does this new government have an opportunity to overcome decades of conflicts once and for all, but it's also being looked to fight violence and corruption in the country, something that Guyana certainly needs, being one of the most corrupt countries in the world, according to Transparency International. So the new government has quite a few major tasks ahead of them: oil exploitation, as well as a fight against corruption and criminality in the country. The thing is, if they achieve their goals, Guyana will attract great attention and may become one of the richest countries in South America. But this will only be if they use their resources well. But the question is, will that happen? And it's certainly a big question. So we've given you our opinion here at VisualPolitik, and now we'd love to know what you think. Do you think Guyana will successfully take advantage of their newly discovered oil? And what position do you think Venezuela should adopt? As always, leave your comments below, and I do hope that you found this video interesting. If you did, please do hit that like button below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every Monday and every Thursday. And if you're looking for something else to watch right now, why not check out our video on why Switzerland is quite so wealthy? You could do that by clicking, let's say, here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.